Welcome to the Clay News and Views podcast. My name is Josh Allen. Today, I am very excited to talk to Chuck Lindholm, who is running for Orange Park Town Council. Chuck, thanks for being on the show, man. Tell the people about who are you and why do you want to be on the Orange Park Town Council?
Well, Josh, it's a pleasure to meet you. First time, and appreciate you taking some time to come out and talk with me.
Yeah, man.
Look, I've been a resident in Orange Park for a long time, and there's I got a lot of love for the town. It's I call it the best kept secret in Northeast Florida, and we've got a lot of great resources. We got the water. I love the roads just because we're close to the freeway and whatnot. Get in and out of town. A lot of great businesses here too, and so over the years, as things changed and we've gotten to know the town a little bit. I got involved with started going to council meetings, joined the historical preservation board. And then, 2018-ish, I got invited to join the Parks and Recreation Committee, and really enjoyed that. And, just sort of developed some relationships and a little understanding how the town was working. And that's really how I got started. When you talk about why I wanted to jump in now, the way the cycle works for council is there are only a couple of open seats in an election cycle. So I was looking at the timing on that, and it worked out. The real impetus in the last year plus has just been some of the spending that I've seen going on in the town that's kind of made me scratch my head and think that there might be some alternatives, some better ways to do some of those things. In my prior life, I was in private business for quite a while, managing budgets, managing strategy, managing big teams. I know there's a different way to approach these things than what I was seeing. And, I thought, maybe I could jump in and help. Maybe I could offer some suggestions, some alternatives. Maybe I could bring a fresh eye and a fresh approach to some of the things that were being discussed up in the diocese and in the various committees.
Okay. So yeah, my question wasn't necessarily about the timing so much as, like I've told folks that are running for Orange Park and Green Cove Town Councils, it's a little bit of a thankless job, right?
I think it's a big thankless job.
Yeah,
I thank these folks every time we get a chance to see them at council, because they deal with a lot of challenges, and
yeah.
in some ways they're volunteers. Yes, they get paid, but it's nominal, and it really is thankless with some of the things that they have to wrestle and tackle.
Yeah, and I think too, there's a lot of outside pressures on some of the town council members. I won't go too far into it. You're clearly the seat that you are running for has an incumbent, and we're not here necessarily to talk about the incumbent. Um, but you see that there are some things, some changes maybe that are needed, and that's sort of the reason that you think you're throwing your hat in the ring.
100%.
Because what I've seen, and you posted something to Facebook about this just earlier today, is the budget not, and this isn't just for Orange Park, but the budget for the town has sort of outpaced what seems like is affordable for people to pay, right? The same thing is happening at the county level with the school board. The local governments tended over the course of COVID, when a lot of federal funding and state funding was flowing in, to not be conservative with their spending, right? And so I've seen the budgets grow across the board in the local municipalities, and the question really is, if we're running into what we think is going to happen in Tallahassee, where everything except school board property taxes are going away, how does the county, how does Orange Park, how does Green Cove, how does Keystone Heights, how do you fill the gap, right? Because they're providing services, whether they're doing it efficiently or not is another conversation we'll have here in a minute. So what you're looking at, this sort of fiscal cliff is how it's been described by some people. You're on let's say you get elected to the town council. What are some of the things that you think the town should do and can do to overcome the financial challenges it's going to face?
So look, I think, it's a fact that our budget in the town, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years has grown, almost 130%. It's
Yep.
substantial. When you look at that on a, like a CAGR basis, aggregate growth basis, or just a normal nominal rate, that's maybe 25% or so per year.
Right.
Um, if you look at inflation just in that time period, granted, this current administration, the inflation's kind of come down, but we saw a little bit higher inflation rate maybe just a couple years ago. Um, that budget growth is in excess of just posted inflation.
Yep.
It's a lot. And, I think it's fair to ask, you know, um, is the taxpayers' wallet growing that fast? Because our revenues aren't keeping up, and yet we're being asked to pay more taxes to cover
Mhm.
some of those budget expenses. And so, that's a real concern. And you make a great point. I think this legislation that's pending, or at least passed yesterday in Florida House and on the way to the Senate, is going to put some serious questions on the table for
Mhm.
municipalities, particularly somebody like, or a place like Orange Park. If we, my phone just kind of beeped. Let me
No
turn it
worries.
off.
Yeah, you're good.
If we, uh, if we kind of just peek over the horizon and ask, are we in a good place fiscally to absorb or weather that revenue cut that's pending? What's that going to do? Um, we, as a town, our basic job, the basic role of City Hall, for lack of a better word, is really to keep, services going, fire,
Yep.
water, rescue, safety, keep the roads going. Um, those are principle. And, if we're finding that, we might be stuck with some cuts, those might be in jeopardy.
Yep.
And if we've, allowed the budget over the years to even grow in excess of, say, inflation, it jeopardizes some of those, some of those services. And so I know that we can get a more financially sound or sort of secure approach, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to try and jump in and help and start running.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to be in the business of thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead, and you have to sometimes plan for the worst case scenario. And the town of Orange Park is not unique in being sort of caught by surprise. It is what I watch the town council meetings. I watch, I'm a nerd. I cover this stuff
Right.
for all the municipalities. I don't live in the town of Orange Park or Green Cove or Keystone. And I was thinking over the last year or so, what this was essentially a funding bubble. We talk about bubbles in different markets.
Right.
There's an AI bubble. Some people are saying now. Before there was the .com bubble, the early 2000s, and this was a little bit of a funding bubble. And I said this special funding that the federal government and the state government are sort of pushing into the municipalities is eventually going to dry up. And it didn't seem like any municipality said, well, hey, we should bank some of those dollars and not spend all of them. Almost across the board, across the entire state, all of the municipalities just went gangbusters with spending. We've seen this with the school board, and I know this isn't in your purview. They
Oh,
spent millions of dollars on cars,
right.
right, over the course of this funding bubble, instead of doing other things, and they spend money on a whole bunch of things. So it sounds like at some point there's going to have to be hard conversations, both in the town of Orange Park and all the other places. And at some point you've got to look at all the things that you're spending. One thing I want to touch on is the Johnson Slough project. Right. So you posted that it's a project to raise roads so future kayakers can paddle under an impassable creek, and the cost is estimated between 22 and $30 million. Like, is that number right? Like, is that like that's insane? Because
So
the total budget of the town, like you posted, is only 40 million.
right. Um, we need to probably take a little bit of a step back. The budget, like I said, has grown probably 130% over the last 5 years. With that came a lot of money, like you mentioned, federal grants,
Yep.
state grants, um, to 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 go out and help communities, particularly during COVID. And Orange Park, no different than anybody else, took advantage of that for sure.
Yep.
We also started looking at some grants to help with funding of various initiatives. Everybody does.
Yep.
if you go back in time to Irma, when Irma came here, Orange Park, and all these little places along the river here on the west side got hit pretty hard.
Mhm.
We had a lot of flooding. At the time, the county or the council had put together a commission to try and figure out where some of those pinch points were.
Right.
Johnson Slough is one of those, and there's a couple of points on that creek or on the slough which have roads on them, and the thought was we can get these cleared, we can help with drainage because we've got a little flooding problems on
Mhm.
occasion. There's a number of sort of tributaries that run into this little creek as
Right.
well. And, you mentioned the fact that we got a lot of money during, some spending monies during COVID. Well, we didn't take any of that money and put towards, in any meaningful manner, sort of this mitigation of some of this flooding.
Right.
Now we're kind of confronted with an idea of going in and fixing it. We've got an engineering firm in town that's been contracted to come in and look at it. And one of the things they want to do is raise the road, put in some culverts underneath
Right.
the road to get it above a flood line.
Right.
We can get some funding and some grant money from the state if we can use this recreation area because it butts up against Bradley Park at
Mhm.
Nelson Point,
Yep.
and that would give us a little bit of relief as well. Fact is, though, that the thing that's got me concerned is the we haven't taken time. I mean, I don't feel like we've asked the harder questions if we could find some alternative ways. The proposals initially came in at like 17. We got a $7 million grant, and it was matching. If we could raise it to 14, obviously the 17 was too high. They pushed back. It's been in work for a while. And of course, inflation, engineering, construction costs going up, and it's gone up to 22 million. The town had a workshop to sort of review that. And it's the single largest project, civil works project that the town's ever embarked on in
Yeah, it's
terms
gotta
of
be the
funding.
biggest in the
Yeah.
history. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. The city's budget is $40 million right now. So if it's 22 million, at a baseline or back out costs for some engineering, still the total cost is in that ballpark. We have to have a real hard conversation amongst ourselves and say, this is really going to be worth it. The thing that's frustrated me too is in anticipation of potentially approving it, and the council, the town not having the money, they've gone out and voted a construction loan already to start work on this thing, which has got interest costs as well.
Right.
And so if we're growing our budget, our revenues haven't been able to keep up, and we've been balancing that budget with grants and federal matching funds and so forth. Now we're proposing an even bigger project in the light of or in the face of potential cuts with property tax and stuff. It's really not a great place to be fiscally,
Right.
and it. I just wish that we would sort of stop and take a harder look at this project. It's one of the projects. It's one of the things that's sort of the leadership, the direction of kind of where we've been going. I've been thinking I have an opportunity to come in and maybe
Okay.
take a different trajectory.
Yeah, I think when you're facing the possible financial problems that Orange Park and the county and everybody's going to be facing potentially, you really got a $22 million project is a lot, right? And
17 million's a lot.
yeah, yeah,
14 million is a lot.
yeah. I was shocked when I saw that number. I mean, if you're raising roads, though, it sort of makes sense. Like road construction is not cheap. Yeah.
No, it's
So
not. And, I don't know that there's a couple points on this flood plain or, creek that do flood. And addressing this one first, I don't know if it's going to take care of the stuff that's upstream that we've had to work with, and
right.
if it's going to leave us any money to even take care of those problems later on. So it's just a question of priorities. It's a question
Yep.
of judgment, and I'd like to be on in a position to sort of help
Sure.
uh,
At least
look
at
at
least
that.
ask the questions, right? Like,
Right.
is this the best way to do it? Is this the most cost effective way to do it?
Yeah.
Is there a different way of doing it that would get you the same results or 90% of the result for less cost, right? Like, and that's the sort of governance that I want.
Yeah.
That's the sort of person I want to in one of those positions, and we sorely lack that across the board, both in the local municipalities at the county level and school board. Like, we don't have anyone who asks those tough questions. A lot of time, we get presented information by the state or someone else, and we just say, okay, well, I guess that's the information, and we don't look at it critically. And that's the no. If this was a business, I can tell you in my private business life, there is no I don't just hand someone a proposal and say, "Give me double digit millions of dollars,"
Yeah.
without a whole bunch of scrutiny from a whole bunch of folks
Well, in
about,
fairness, I mean,
yeah,
there's been a number of studies. There was a workshop put on.
yeah,
We got a lot of feedback from residents who are adjacent and in the area. But again, we've asked for an engineering review to maybe cut down the height of the bridges, see if that'll
right,
save some money, or do we need to make these waterways navigable? Can cut some costs in that regard? So
sure.
it's an ongoing kind of conversation, but it's one that I just point to as sort of an example where I think I can make a difference.
Yeah, especially yeah, okay, and I like that. I like that outlook. And then you have the other. You said it butts up to Bradley Conservation Park.
Well, it is.
Um,
It doesn't just butt. It sort of defines part of the Bradley Park
well, right.
Nelson Point border.
Yeah, if you've walked, I mean, there's houses right there that are on the slough that are on the creek. If you go into Bradley Park and go towards the right, it's over there.
Bradley Park is really an island.
Yeah.
It is,
Yep.
and the lake borders it on one end,
Yep.
then the slough
Yep.
borders it on the back end, and part of it.
And it's a beautiful piece of property, but there's also another proposed project for the conservation park, which is bathrooms.
Which are high, they're needed. There's a necessity. There's a need for them for sure.
Yeah, and the price tag, from what I see from your post, is a little over $250,000 for bathrooms. I
It's
don't
another
know.
one of those things I point out, which is, we've had a couple of discussions at council about, how, you know, how big of a project do we need to make this? Can we go with porta potties? Can we find alternatives?
Yeah, I'd like to know what that cost is, and I haven't looked at it. Maybe you have, and if you haven't, that's fine. Is the big part of that cost the plumbing to get the water, in and out?
That's a separate issue, and it's
Yeah.
already kind of
So
been addressed and taken care of. But
yeah,
look, there was a town manager a couple months back who put up a side-by-side proposal for both a construction as well as a potential portable
right.
opportunity. At one point, there was a house on the property. Mr. John Nelson, who actually owned the property, and the property's partly named after Nelson Point.
Okay.
We wanted to potentially, convert his home into. There was already bathrooms there, and just bring it up to ADA kind of
Oh, okay.
specifications. But it it had flooded during Irma. It was a lot of work that was needed,
Right.
and they finally it was decided just to bulldoze it, and the park's not had any kind of restroom facilities there.
Hmm.
Now there's not that much traffic that goes through there, to be frank, but some people have asked for it, and there is a need.
Everyone I know that's gone to the park, the one thing they say is, "Oh, it was great, but there's nowhere to use the restroom if you need
Right.
to." So,
And question is, what does that need look like? Can
mhm,
you get by with just a temporary stall or a rental
right.
stall, or do we need to build a facility?
Can it just be one bathroom that,
Yeah,
people take turns? Like,
yeah.
does it need to be, you
And
know, s
where I've called out a number 275 that was put out by one of the prior city managers, and he put a proposal up there side by side on a 50-year run basis, what it would cost to put in a structure today versus a pad to absorb a porta potty kind of situation. And he said, up front, we needed to put pad construction was probably going to come into the order of 275, and he quoted 250 for a similar sort of pad temporary installation for porta potty kind of situation, but with rentals, residuals over that time period, we were looking closer to $1 million. Um, Still 275, if that's where, we're going. Again, my challenge is the average 3-2 home in Orange Park is barely 300 grand,
Yeah.
and we're getting 2 bathrooms or a bathroom for almost the same cost.
Yeah, so exactly that's why my thought was I want to break. If it was me and I'm looking at that and you're asking me to vote yes or no, I want to
Yeah,
break down to that 275. What does that entail? Where does that how does that cost add up, and what am I getting?
yeah.
Because the cynical person, and I've been accused of being very cynical towards government in general, is like my first thought was like, well, is that like the gold-plated toilets that like President Trump has like on the cover of Time magazine? Like, what are we getting for quarter of a million
Yeah.
dollars, and obviously that's not what we're getting. I'm not saying the town is being that frivolous, but
No, and
that's
I'm
a
not being irresponsible, but
yeah,
I want the questions to be asked. Do we have alternatives? What are some different cost savings approaches?
yeah,
Can we get by with one bathroom, versus maybe two? Can we do it with a rental versus full construction? If we flood again, if it's a rental, you can take that off property.
right,
You don't have to sit there and go back and repair if there's
yep,
any kind of problems.
yeah. I think if it was me, my respectful response back to whomever is presenting it is, you got to sell me on this. It's your job to come to me with a presentation that gives me enough details to say, okay, this makes sense when I'm spending other people's money, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not you writing a check, it's not me writing a check.
It's all of us because
Yeah, it's
we're
all of us, right? Like
eventually
so,
going to have to pay
yeah,
for it. And this has kind of been, again, the budget has grown, and as we grow it, we got to add taxes, and then we add taxes, and then we've got revenue, and we spend more on, I don't know, things that may or may not be necessary or nice to have. And it's just, I want to have a discussion, a little harder discussion than what I'm seeing in the last few years. And, we need a restroom facility. There's no
yep,
question there. It's just how do we approach it and how do we do it,
for
and
sure.
do we spend $250,000 plus, or do we find some other alternatives?
Because with the restroom, it then becomes a place where the town can hold other sorts of events. You could have like some sort of a food truck, something there without too much trouble, right? Like you could do. There's all sorts of things you could do there with it. So it may very well be that the cost is the cost,
Yeah.
but I like hearing you say that you would actually dig
Well,
into
it's
those numbers and not just necessarily accept them on face value and say, well, that must be the best we can do.
it's a passive park. It's just kind of a nature preserve,
Yep.
and it needs to be kept that way,
Yep.
because of the way it was created and funded. And it's unique in that regard because there's not too many of them around here
Right.
in Northeast Florida, and we want to kind of protect our nature.
And it is a beautiful park. Like it
Yeah.
is. It is a great park. Like it's wonderful, especially, I'm a cold weather guy, because I'm a bit on the huskier side, so
Wow.
like in the cool weather, I love going there, like, it's great. It's a great place to be. So hopefully that will get sorted out, and whatever is needed, the town will be able to get it in the most cost effective way.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about is there any other, like, what other sort of hard conversations do you want to have? What other things do you think the town, town council or the town in general needs to focus on that maybe they're not?
Again, it just, peeking out over the horizon and trying to understand what our fiscal landscape might look like, given the property tax kind of conversations going on in Tallahassee. Let's have some contingency plans. Let's discuss it. What are some alternatives out there that we can look at as a town if this comes to fruition? I know that they've just started, but I'd like to be part of that as well because I don't want to see our services cut,
Right.
particularly our fire, our police, and not saying that that's going to, but it's going to leave a big hole in the town's budget, and we need to start preparing for it if
Yeah, you
it
gotta
comes
get
down.
gotta get ahead of it, because
Yeah.
if it catches you unaware, then it becomes a bigger problem. One thing that some people think is a big problem in the town of Orange Park is your infamous red light cameras.
Our infamous red light.
So what do you what what are your thoughts on red light cameras? Do you love them? Do you hate them?
Look, when you and I talked the other day and you brought that up, I kind of chuckled. I kind of laughed. Um, I'm not a fan, for sure. That's just being frank and honest. Because, there's times when, there's a light change and I mean, by depending on where I'm at, am I accelerating or slowing down? Can I
Right.
game the system and get through?
Yep.
And I don't like it in that regard because there's nobody holding anybody accountable other than me and a camera.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but the flip side of that is that there's a safety issue there. Some people will say, "Hey, look, there's no data to show that it makes it any safer." But we've had in the town, we've had some accidents in a couple different intersections over the years, where people were running lights and
Right.
whatnot, and so in that regard, as a safety issue, it's I like it. It helps us. I also look. The reality is, again, the fiscal situation for the town, and in all municipalities, but for us in general, um, it's going to be it's questionable here if we get this property tax
Right.
proposal through. And believe me, I'm all for the property tax. I'm a homeowner. I'm homesteaded, and I think it's great. But the red light camera, believe it or not, is it's a moneymaker for the city as well. It's a
Right.
revenue stream. Some people don't like hearing
You're
that.
the first politician, potential politician, right? I don't mean that as a pejorative, but you're the first person who's running for office who has had the guts just to say that, right? Like, 'cause a lot of people dance around it. They don't want to say like the revenue they bring in is part of the equation on whether or not they'll ever be gotten rid of.
Right.
And it's sort of it's refreshing to hear you at least acknowledge that that's part of
Let's be
the
transparent.
conversation.
Let's be
Yeah.
honest. But by the same token, too, this light is in these. There's three of them, I think, in Orange Park proper. All the residents who live here know where they are.
Right.
People have wised up, and they don't fall. The folks that are getting pretty much predominantly tagged right now, I think, are out of town, and they're
Would
most
you be
frustrated.
willing to get rid of them? This is a hypothetical scenario, so if you're watching or listening to this, just understand
Hypothetical.
this is a non-binding hypothetical, right? So let me just put that out there. If there was a situation where the town could get rid of the uh, red light cameras, but it didn't hurt the bottom line of the town from a fiscal perspective, would you be in favor of keeping them or getting rid of them?
You know, um, I'd probably I'll punt on that and just say
All
I have
right.
to study it
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I
Fair
don't
enough.
I
Fair
don't
enough.
know.
You do seem like a data-driven guy. So would it be fair to say if someone were to present you with data in one direction or the other, saying definitively they're making the town safer or definitively they aren't making the town safer, you would take that into consideration in your
You
decision?
have to take
Yeah.
everything into
All
consideration,
right.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Cool. All right. So I think what else do you want to? Are there any other topics you want to talk about? I guess I don't really have. I don't live in Orange Park, so I don't have a horse in the race.
I know.
So for
So these
me,
red
it's
light cameras probably were more annoying than anything.
the red light cameras for me. It's not even about the revenue or the safety. I do think the constitutionality of it. I think there's parts of it that are just on its face. The government knows that it's not fair because when a government fleet gets a red light ticket,
Mhm.
they don't have to pay it.
No, I didn't
The
know that.
municipalities don't pay. So all I'm saying is if I have to get a red light ticket and they can't prove that I was driving my car, then, if let's say, and this again, hypotheticals, let's say a vehicle from the school district blows through a red light
Yeah.
in the town of Orange Park, the school district should have to pay that fine, just like an individual would pay the fine, right? Like, and I know that now you're just shuffling tax dollars from one or another. And I think the government also knows that they're not fair and possibly unconstitutional because you don't get points on your license. If you blow through a red light in the town of Orange Park, the worst that can happen to you is you will lose your license if you don't pay the fine.
Hmm.
But you will get no points on your license. They cannot report it to your insurance company. Insurance companies can't take it into consideration because it wasn't proven from a legal standpoint. So there's no real teeth to it other than give me the money.
Yeah.
So I think if you get people in a room, and they don't know that they're being recorded, a lot of folks would admit, like, yeah, it's a revenue thing, and maybe it has some safety value, but it's not a real ticket because you don't get points on your license, and it doesn't affect you in the same way. Now, if I were to drive drunk, right, there's points on my license, there's real life consequences. If I
Right.
continue to drive drunk again and again, eventually I lose my license. I could blow through the red light cameras in the town of Orange Park 20, 30, 40 times, and as long as I pay the fine, nothing else happens to me, right? So that we
Well,
can get into
please
that at a
don't do that.
different. Yeah, I don't know, and I wouldn't. I'm not saying that I would, right? I've never gotten a red light camera ticket, but my wife tells me I drive like an old man, so
Okay.
I wear that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
But anyway, I could go on all day about the red light cameras. For me, it isn't. It's less about the money in it than it is about just in general. Is that a right way to hold people accountable for wrong behavior? Because it is
Right.
wrong to blow through a red light. I don't think any reasonable person would
And it
say
puts folks at
otherwise.
risk. It does. I mean,
Yeah,
we've had some accidents, and I think everybody would agree that
yeah.
the Kingsley 17 intersections, particularly, is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, people drive like maniacs. Even
Yeah.
driving here today, there was a couple people who I thought were just like, "My goodness, what are you doing?" Like, so all right, so let's give you sort of the final say in the interview here. You have carte blanche to the voters of Orange Park. Give them your pitch for you
You,
being on the
you've heard my
council.
pitch. It's all about sort of trying to get some fiscal restraint, some fiscal responsibility sort of brought back in. I'd like to see a little more rigor. But by the same token, too, I love this little town. It's been home for me for a long time, and my wife grew up here, and she and I met. I was in the Navy when we met, and we've lived. I'm not kidding, all over the world, and we chose to come back here. I call it the best little place, the best little secret in Northeast Florida, and it truly is. And I'd love to be able to keep the services in place that we've got. I'd love to be able to bring a fresh eye to some of these budget issues. Like I said, I've managed over the years a lot of different complex budgets and situations, and I'd just like to see a little bit more transparency and accountability, and I'm pledging and I'm committing to deliver on that, and that's really what I want to bring.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you. Appreciate anyone that has the guts to run, and I especially appreciate people who have the guts to do an interview. I'm not going to name any names, but there's some people running in municipal elections who do not have the same guts. So, Chuck, I appreciate it, man. I will tell you what I tell everyone, so don't feel special. But I wish you best of luck at the polls. And
It's my first time.
the
First
only
time in the hat.
obligation you have to me, the only thing I ask of you is when you win, come back on and do a victory lap interview with me. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Josh.